Yo guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today I'm going to be ranking every single NHL prospect pool right now in 2020. Now, ranging from elite to average, there is a bunch of interesting prospect pools right now in the NHL, right before the 2020 NHL draft. But who do I see as having the best and worst prospect pools in the entire NHL, and which prospect pools make my top tier and low tier? Watch till the end for all the tiers and all the rankings, and of course, hit that subscribe button if you're new. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, today's tier list is going to be a little bit different. As you can tell, it's a little bit of a different setup. I have my camera in the corner, and I have the live feed of the tier list so that you guys can get my genuine reactions on where I think each team should be. And this is going to be very fun because in the past with my tier lists, I would put like the graphics on the screen, but I wouldn't really have it interactive. So I wanted to make it a lot more genuine, and I think this definitely does work. So you can see with the 5 tiers we have here today, we have tier S, the top tier, then elite, great, good, and then at last you have meh. But we're gonna go through each and every single NHL team, rank their prospect pools one by one. So we're starting out with the Dallas Stars here. And Dallas, obviously my first favorite team, I think is kind of middle in the pack when it comes to prospect pools. Jason Robertson, Thomas Harley, Jake Ottinger, really some great quality prospects on that prospect pool, but it's not an elite level, and there's a little bit of depth issues I think with the prospect pool too, but that's just because they've been a good team over the past couple of years, and that's pretty much reigned true. So I'm going to put Dallas in the great tier, but they're kind of in the middle of that good and great tier where you can make a case for either. I put them in the great tier just because of Thomas Harley being so good, Jason Robertson having an amazing AHL season, so I'm putting Dallas at pretty much the middle part. Now going on to the Edmonton Oilers, and they definitely have an interesting prospect pool because you got Evan Bouchard, you got some solid guys, even though I don't think they're as good as people think, Philip Broberg, but Edmonton's kind of like Dallas, in my opinion, kind of middle of the pack, especially when you have Kailer Yamamoto graduating, Ethan Bear graduating, even a guy like Caleb Jones, you could make the case of graduating. So even though Edmonton has some solid guys, I'm going to put them in the good tier. Now going on to the Montreal Canadiens, and the Canadiens are really interesting in this because there's been some big graduates. You have Nick Suzuki, who I think has graduated, Ryan Poehling, who I think has graduated, just barely, but still, and you also have Cale Fleury too, and those are some big ones, but still without those guys, they have some excellent prospects: Cole Caufield, Josh Brook, Alexander Romanov, Matthias Norlander. You got some great young guys. So although Montreal isn't in the S tier, they might have been a year ago, I'm still going to put them in the elite tier. Definitely one of the best prospect pools in the NHL right now. Then you go on to the Florida Panthers, who are a little bit more of an interesting story because they are super underrated, I think, when it comes to prospect pools. You got Spencer Knight, Ilya Chonok, and some good forward options like Owen Tippett. Although they aren't in the S tier and probably aren't in the elite tier right now, they got some great, excellent options. And although Florida is a pretty solid team right now, they have some good young options. And again, I think it will do pretty well in the next few years. Although they aren't going to be in the elite tier, I'm going to put them in great. They are very solid when it comes to prospects, and it's been that way over the past couple of seasons. And also, I forgot to mention Grigory Denisenko. He's pretty good too. But now going on to the New York Rangers and where I place them, and they're kind of in that middle area where you can make the case for S, you can make the case for elite, but in my opinion, I'm going to put them in the S tier, and there's a really big reason why. The first thing here is that I think that Igor Shesterkin is kind of in the gray area of being a prospect, but also being an NHL player, but for the sake of this video, I am going to consider him still a part of that prospect pool until further notice, probably until next season, and that's a big reason why I think they are an S-tier prospect pool right now. But you have the defensive options in Keandre Miller, Nils Lundqvist, Zachary Jones, some great options. On the forward group too, you have Vitali Kravtsov still, and some other solid guys like Morgan Barron too, Carl Hendrickson. Although New York I don't think is the best prospect pool in the league, I think they definitely have a top 3 run right now when it comes to goaltending, defense, and forwards. They have a pretty complete package in my opinion. Then going on to the Minnesota Wild, and Minnesota is a pretty fascinating team here because I could go either way, but Kirill Kaprizov definitely does raise them. They have Matthew Boldy, Capo Kakkonen, some really solid options, but for me Minnesota is lacking that star talent besides obviously Kirill Kaprizov. they're kind of in that great to good area, kind of like Edmonton in my opinion, so I'm going to put them in the good tier. Now going on to the Philadelphia Flyers though, and they're an interesting one because they've also seen some graduations like Carter Hart, like Travis Sanheim recently, but they still have some great young guys like Morgan Frost, Felipe Myers still, if you consider him a prospect, and also in the 2019 draft, they got Cam York, Bobby Brink, excellent options for that prospect pool. I'm going to put them in the great tier. I don't see them as an elite prospect pool right now, but definitely top 10 in my opinion. Now going on the Anaheim Ducks, and they're definitely kind of in that great to elite kind of situation. But I'm still going to put them in the great tier. I think after this 2020 draft, they could be in the elite, but they still have some work to do. But you still have some excellent options like Trevor Zegras, Sam Steele, Maxime Comtois that make that prospect pool very solid. Then going on to the St. Louis Blues, and they're a team that has some great star power prospect-wise, but obviously they've been a good team for so long that having good prospect depth is just non-existent for them, but they still have some good options. Obviously in the star power, you got Clem Costin, Jordan Kyrou, although Robert Thomas has pretty much graduated for 2 years now. That's a team that still has some decent bunch of prospects, but I just don't think has the depth to be in the good tier, so I'm going to put them in meh, but they still have a pretty solid one. Now going on to the New York Islanders, and they're definitely one of the more underrated teams when it comes to prospect pools. They're kind of in that 10 area where they have some really good prospects. Oliver Wahlstrom, Ilya Sorokin, Noah Dobson, just those top 3 alone are very good, but then you got some solid prospect depth, I think, in guys like Simon Holmstrom, Linus Soderstrom, that make that prospect pool very solid. I'm going to put them in the great tier, not quite elite, but a team that definitely has a solid future ahead of them if they use it right. Now going on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm a big fan of what they've been able to accomplish with how little picks they've actually had. With the 2019 draft, I think was absolutely incredible for them, getting Samuel Poulin and also Nathan Legare, one of my favorite prospects in 2019, and just able to get him in the same draft. But for Pittsburgh, again, they're a team that's been so good for so long. You're going to see your prospect pool just not be up to that level unless you get steal after steal. So for Pittsburgh, I'm going to put them in the meh tier, but they still have some solid prospects on them, and they're Pittsburgh. They're usually going to turn out pretty solid. Now going on to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and in terms of prospect pools, they've kind of gotten overrated and underrated at the same time. I think they're more middle of the pack, but especially if you consider Rasmus Sandin as a prospect still, I think they're one of the better prospect pools in the league. Again, Sandin, you got on the defense Timothy Liljegren as well. Nicholas Robertson, who I had as like a top 20 prospect in the 2019 draft, slipped, and who would have knew he was so good? Yeah, it was me, by the way. But Robertson there too. But now going on to the Ottawa Senators, and they're going to be the second team that I put in the elite tier, and there's a pretty big reason why. Now, for Ottawa, it also helps that they've been so bad these past 3 years, but they've compiled a pretty good prospect pool of top picks, but also some pretty good late round steals. Drake Batherson, who was selected, I think, in the 5th round in 2017, if I remember. But then you got the top end prospects in Josh Norris, Logan Brown, Eric Brandstrom, Lassie Thompson. And on the goaltending side, you got Matt Zugard, Joey Decord. Not bad at all. And then on to the New Jersey Devils, and they're kind of a team like in that Islanders Flyers range where they're kind of 10th around that spot for me, where they have some great prospects but just not up to the level. Now, after the 2020 draft, I see that changing, definitely being one of the better prospect pools in the league, but New Jersey, I think, just kind of lacks in that department, but still looks very solid. Ty Smith, I think, is one of the best defensive prospects right now in hockey, and then you have some solid options on the forward group. But for New Jersey, especially after you have Jack Hughes graduating and some other guys too, like Mackenzie Blackwood, it definitely lessens it. I'm going to have them in the great tier, kind of in that area where the Islanders are, but after the 2020 draft, again, that could end up changing. Now going on to the Calgary Flames, and they're a team that I just can't really pinpoint, because if you still consider Dylan Dubé a prospect, if you still consider UC Valimaki a prospect, then I think that's a very solid prospect pool. I personally don't. Those two guys, I think, have graduated up to the NHL level, at least when it comes to the games they have played so far, and that definitely lessens Calgary's blow here. But they still got Jacob Pelletier, very solid prospects in the system, and they're just nothing special if you discount Dubé and Valimaki. So I'm going to put them in the good tier. Not meh, but not great either. Now going on to the Arizona Coyotes, and they kind of suffer from the same thing as the Calgary Flames, but they still have some great young quality prospects. You got Barrett Hayton, Matthias Masili, I really do like, and then you have some solid options. I just don't think with Arizona they have the prospect depth to really put them up to this elite or great level. I'm going to have them in the good tier, but Barrett Hayton does make that a very good pool. But yeah, also has played a lot of NHL games. He might have already graduated if the season didn't get canceled or suspended. And for Arizona, it's pretty much only him on that one-man island. Then you go on to the Chicago Blackhawks, and Chicago, prospect pool-wise, has had one of the biggest turnovers, I think, of the last year, because Graviteh has graduated. I think Adam Boqvist has also graduated too, and that's a team that relied on those two prospects to be up to that great or elite level. You look at the other prospects, and they still have some great other options. Ian Mitchell is fantastic, Chad Kreis, and you got some other solid options, but to me, Chicago is just lacking that star power that they did a year ago. So I'm going to put them in the good tier, but after the 2020 draft, that prospect pool will likely be restocked. Then going on to the Vegas Golden Knights, and just like Chicago, there's been some pretty big turnover on that prospect pool. Cody Glass, I think, gets graduated from a prospect. Same thing as Nicholas Hague, and they've also traded a few other prospects too. Lucas Elvenes is fantastic, but I'm really not sure his ceiling in the NHL level. And without Cody Glass, without Nick Hague, I think that's a team that is just lacking the prospect. So I will put them in the med tier, but I don't think Vegas is exactly suffering right now. Then we go on to the Colorado Avalanche, and they're going to be the third team in the elite tier here today. A team that I think just has an excellent prospect pool all around. The superstars rival some of the best teams in the league when it comes to prospects. Bowen Byram, Martin Kaut. You also got some solid guys, I think, in Connor Timmins and Alex Newhook. Not bad whatsoever. And when it comes to the prospect pool, it is star powered. So there isn't so much depth there that overwhelms you, but there's a great amount of prospects in that pool that will become great NHL players, I think. Then you go on to the LA Kings, who are, again, in that elite and S tier. And for me, LA just is in the S tier automatically. To me, LA is the best prospect pool in the entire NHL. And that might end up changing after the 2020 draft. We'll see what Ottawa ends up doing. But LA just has such a strong pool overall. When it comes to forwards, I think they are slam dunk the best in the league. Alex Turcotte, Arthur Kaliyev, Samuel Vegamo, Gabriel Velarde. So many good options. Akil Thomas, Rasmus Kupari. The defense is a little bit of an issue prospect pool-wise, but you still have Cale Clegg. You still got Sean Dursey, who I think is very solid too. And LA, after the 2020 draft, if they get a guy like Jamie Drysdale, I think that prospect pool is going to be almost unstoppable. Then you go on to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Tampa's definitely one of the most depth-filled prospects in the league because you have like 6 different guys who I would say are quality, great prospects. But there isn't that star power prospect pool-wise that a lot of other teams have. But in terms of depth, I think Tampa's very good, and that's what puts them in the great tier for me. Tampa just has so many great guys like Kachuk. You got Tyler Radish as well. You got Cal Foote. Some great, excellent options who I think will be good NHL players for sure. But now going on to the San Jose Sharks, and unfortunately for San Jose, they really could have used a top 5 pick in this draft, but you can thank Ottawa for that happening. For San Jose, they still have some solid prospects, though. Ryan Merkley, I think, is great, and, you know, guys like Sasha Chmielewski, who I'm a pretty big fan of. But San Jose, especially compared to a lot of other teams, just falls so short. And it's just a symptom of being so good and being a playoff team for so long. That's obviously not been up to that level this year. But that's a prospect pool that is just lacking depth, lacking star power, and just lacking pure talent. I think that will change if San Jose keeps tanking, but to me, they are a slam dunk pick to go in the meta tier. Now going on to the Carolina Hurricanes though, and I think they will go in the elite tier. Now for Carolina, their prospect depth, as I've been saying for like the past 2 years, is absolutely impeccable. Now the star power has been lacking since Martin Necas ended up graduating, but the prospect depth is just striking with Carolina. Just listing off the 2019 draft alone, you got Ryan Suzuki, you got Pierre Kochejanov, then you got solid guys, I think, like Patrick Pistola and Tony Honka, and that's just that draft. Not even mentioning guys like Jake Bean, Alex Nedeljkovic, and some great other prospects in that pool that just make it so deadly. Then going on to the Buffalo Sabres, and I think for Buffalo, that's a team that is kind of in that middle area area of great and also potentially being elite, but I don't think they're quite there yet. You have Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestat, Ryan Johnson, I guess, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and you have some great solid group of players, but to me, Buffalo is just lacking the pure star power that you would expect in a team that's been so bad for so long. And although there has been some big graduates on that team, to me, they're going to be in the great tier. But after the 2020 draft, it will depend on who they pick, but I think they could be a team that has a great prospect pool, potentially even in the elite tier. Then going on to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Columbus is one of the more hard prospect pools to pinpoint because you have so many good options on that team. I mean, you have some good options like Liam Foudy, Vinny Venilainen, but they've been some great big graduates recently. Emil Bemstrom has graduated, I think. Alexander Texier, I think, has graduated too. You also have the man, the myth, the legend, Elvis Merzlikins, who I think has graduated. So after that, they don't really have so many options. I think that will change after the 2020 draft. They do have their first round pick, which is a lot better than they could say last year, but they're still going to find themselves in the meh tier. Then going on to the Washington Capitals, and they're a team that I just kind of have to put in the meh tier. They have a great excellent prospect in Connor McMichael, but if you consider Ilya Samsonov a graduate, which I personally do, that's a team that just does not have that many options right now. Alexiev is very solid. Again, McMichael is one of the better prospects in the league, but besides that, there's just not enough prospect depth on that team to really put them in the good tier, in my opinion. But now going on to the Nashville Predators, now I was about to say the Washington Capitals again. No, they are not Washington, but they still have a pretty solid prospect pool. Nashville has some great young options like Philip Tomasino, and also Igor Afanasyev. Ilya Tolvanen has still yet to be known, but we'll see. But they've also had some pretty big graduates also like Dante Fabro, which I think puts them a step behind. But adding Philip Tomasino, Afanasyev, I think is two pretty big adds. To me, there's just not enough in that prospect pool for me to consider them a great prospect pool, but still a very good one, and definitely, in my opinion, on the upper echelon of the good tier, I would say. Then going on to the Vancouver Canucks, and they're one of the most interesting prospect pools to pinpoint because they've had some pretty huge turnover lately. You have Thatcher Demko, who graduated, Quinn Hughes, who was one of the best prospects in the league before this, and that's a pretty big blow. But you also have Vasily Podkolzin and Nils Hoglander, who was one of the best steals of the 2019 draft, Jet Wu, who is still fantastic, and who knows what Olli Juolevi can become. So for Vancouver, I don't think they're in the S. I don't think they're in the elite tier anymore, but that's still a very great prospect pool with some great young options. Then going on to the Boston Bruins, and they're going to find themselves in the meh tier almost automatically. Now, first and foremost, Jack Studnicka is fantastic. Vaakanainen is very solid too. But there's just not enough prospect depth, I would say, with Boston to really consider them even in the good tier, I would think. And that's, I think, again, like a lot of teams in the meh tier, a symptom of them being so good for so long. They just don't really have the picks high enough to get the players they want, and they haven't really been stealing a lot of players recently. But I think for Boston, they have some solid prospects, just not enough to really uphold them against teams like St. Louis, Washington, or even Columbus. Then going on to the Detroit Red Wings, and to me, that's a team that is kind of in the middle of the great and elite tier. But I'm going to have them in the elite tier right now, and that's mostly because of Moritz Seider. I mean, I'm going to be honest, Moritz Seider, one of my favorite prospects of all time, has just been so good, even surpassing my expectations for him this year. Was just absolutely unbelievable in the AHL. In my opinion, one of the best prospects, period, in the entire league. Then you have some great young options like Philip Zadina, Joe Veleno, Jared McIsaac, and on the goaltending side, Philip Larson. Although Detroit isn't in the S tier, and they're probably in the lesser tier of elite tier prospect pools, that's a team that, especially if they get Alexis Lafreniere, will be even better in this prospect pool tier. And then you go on to the last team, the Winnipeg Jets. And Winnipeg is certainly interesting here because they have some great young quality options like Ville Heinola, Christian Vesalainen. You could even consider guys like Logan Stanley, I think. But for Winnipeg, I'm going to put them in the good tier. They just don't have enough prospect depth. And again, they've been good for the past couple of years, so that is a good reason why. But for Winnipeg, they have some solid star power, just not enough depth, in my opinion, to put them in the great tier or even higher than that. But of course, with this tier list video, I need to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know down in the comments down below what you agree and disagree with, and also let me know who you think are the best and worst prospect pools right now in the NHL. Of course, if you enjoyed this one and want to see more, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. if you haven't already. Of course, with this video, make sure you share this one. Get this out, boys, for all the prospect pool rankings. And click on this card right here for all my rankings right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I'll see you guys next video or stream. Goodbye.